life is a love letter to death.
Are you living your life by accident? Okay, I'm gonna die, and that's not a bad thing.
Being okay with death, accepting death in a way. Then the next step was not wanting to die and kind of running away from death. You somehow transformed that into this image of a beautiful woman, and you're writing a love poem to her as the metaphor for death.
Like you were like, you know what? I'm okay with that. You and I will take these close calls with death much more personally than someone that hears it as a story. But is there a way to share the lesson without the cost?
Logistically, just don't let them onto another call until they've done something. Like, if you're a coach and you are letting people off the hook with what they're supposed to be doing in between those calls, you have failed as a transformational professional.
Do you have a ritual that you do to connect to that persona of death?
I just had to write a problem statement while I was on a date with a therapist to go, I'm focusing more on death than I am on life.
What would you say to that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures, but hates his life because no amount of money is ever going to buy a single second of time back? What would you say to that guy that's listening to this podcast that's lost and looking for a better way forward?
What would I say to 18-year-old me?
Welcome to the Amorati podcast with Marvin Allen and Justin Dodd. Join us for a journey through the art of love across the world, guided by timeless wisdom and lived experience.
Welcome to the podcast, Lee. You've helped hundreds of men over the world. And when I joined the Essentials in the Amorati, you were the head mentor. And you had been doing it for 2-3 years at that point, and you've continued on your own path and doing your own projects, and you have your own community and things across the world. But who are you, man? And what is your story? You've helped hundreds of men, and you're, I'm sure women view you as perhaps the greatest lover that they have ever had in their lives. Many. You know, who are you, man? What is your story?
Many women may consider me the greatest lover that they've ever had. What an introduction. We were talking about this before, like how many men I've helped through the Essentials journey, sort of the first step into our community, into our brotherhood. And I think it ranks into sort of like hundreds and hundreds of men. I did it for 4 years, loved it. Mentored you, Justin. Didn't have the opportunity with you, Marvin, but yeah, it's been fantastic. I'm still working with men now, but working with women as well. It's been an interesting journey since 2023 because now I'm 7 years into coaching, thousands of hours into it, and I can't think of doing anything else. Right now, I've come back to really the start of the whole journey. Really, I've gone through sort of several iterations of helping people through life design and relationships and this modality and that modality and everything like that, but it's always come back to inner sovereignty and audacity. I call it disrupticity, but really at its heart is being audacious. You know, I think a watchword that we can all get behind, really. You can call it edge if you want. That's always been the sexiest topic, I think, within the Essentials and the whole philosophy and things like that.
Yeah, maybe take us back to where it all started. Like, who were you before you became a coach, before you joined Ars Amorata, before you went on this whole hero's journey of your own? Like, who was Lee before that?
I was on a hero's journey when I found out about the Ars Amorata. I just come out of a really, really toxic relationship, sort of physically, emotionally abusive on her end. I wasn't in a good job. This was really sort of my first vocation out of university. I ended up working for a bank in a call center. They quickly realized that they need to put me somewhere else, so they put me in complaints and then put me into management. Then all of a sudden I'm running this call center. Absolutely hate it. My relationship's going to shit. Everything. I have contracted shit life syndrome all of a sudden. And I had to go to therapy, I had to go to this and that and the other. And I remember I was 24. And I set some New Year's resolutions on my birthday. There was 3 things. I had a £50 note. I had an empty box of the antidepressants that I was on and a map. And it said, make more of this, stay off this, see more of this. 3 months later, I'd left the relationship, left the job, got another job, did that for 6 months, realized I am not built for the corporate world at all. And then went, I think I'm going to go traveling now. I'm going to fly to Paris. Well, I actually, no, I didn't even fly. I was like, I am going to do the entirety of Europe from the ground. The only time I'm going to fly back is when I finish the journey. So I went into St. Pancras, got a train to Paris, and then that was it. That was me for 3 months around about. And then I was in Budapest. In that time, I'd always listen out for other Brits, because a lot of the people there were American or they were Australian or something like that. So it was nice to have sort of like someone from the home team. I'm in this hostel in Budapest, which is unfortunately closed now. Honestly, it was a pit of scum and villainy. If you really want to live rough, like the stories that I could tell would get this channel nuked. Like no one would ever see this podcast again. And I hear this guy, I hear a British guy, and I'm like, right, great, I can go talk to this guy. He was just coming back from Bucharest. He'd gone to see some friends in Bucharest, and I was heading that way. I'd got 2 tickets on the train to go to Bucharest. So I was like, that'll be fun. It'll be like the second train I was going to be on. I was meant to be taking a very old flame with me at the time. She was in Budapest, and she was going to come with me. And then she talked her way out of it, unfortunately. He's like, I've got loads of friends. There, so I'll put you in a group chat, where group chats weren't even a thing, right? I'm showing my age now. And I got added to this group chat. Basically, everyone left. And there was 2 people left. There was a girl called Roxy and a guy called Jad. Now, you guys both might know Jad, another coach, and Roxy was sort of part of the whole set a long, long time ago. Anyway, she became my tour guide around Bucharest, and one night she says that there's this party going on. There's one of their friends is leaving Bucharest, so they're having a leaving party for him. Would I like to come? Yes, I would like to come. That sounds fantastic. Get to this party, and now I've always found it quite easy to be around women, because I'm not the biggest guy. I've never been very athletic or sporty or anything like that. So in the UK, everyone plays soccer, they play football. I couldn't stand that, so I'd sit and like joke around with the girls and things like that. So I'd never really had too much of a problem with this. I was absolutely oblivious to what was going on outside of this. When I look back, there were so many missed opportunities. It's unbelievable. It makes me very sad. But I get into this room, and there are supermodel-looking women in there, and guys who know how to talk to them. I feel so out of my depth. It's unbelievable. I'm like this 25-year-old guy. I have no idea what I'm out of my depth. Like full nervous system overload going on. Right. Go to the balcony. Go to the veranda. Roll up a cigarette. This was kind of like the worst breathing exercise you can do ever. You know, the worst breathing ritual ever. Roll a cigarette, smoke that, pace around for a while. I'm like, right, what do I do? Because I don't want to waste this opportunity. This is great. This is what any man dreams of, being in a room with just beautiful muse-like women, right? And I'm like, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to find the person who is like the party mayor, right? The president of the party, not the guy whose party it is, because I haven't seen him all night. He's doing something else. I later find out. I walk in on him doing something else, so I won't blow up who this person was. I'm like, right, I'll go in there and I'll find the person whose party it is. I walk into the kitchen, and there's all these women like just around this one guy, and he's making them laugh. He's like telling jokes, he's telling stories and things like that. I'm like, this is the guy. I need to speak to this guy. How do I do this? He's got a tattoo on his arm. He's got this A on his arm. I'll go talk to him. Ask him about a tattoo. Nice and easy open, right? Oh, hey man, I like your tattoo. What's that all about? I'm Lee. Like, oh, I'm Zan. Yeah, this is my company, the Ars Amorata. I'm like, oh, what's that? We talk about reclaiming beauty. We talk about seduction. We talk about women. do you remember the game? And a long, long time ago, obviously read the game. I was probably about 18 when I read it. And I was like, yeah, I read that. Well, I was the natural in the game. I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. And anyway, that kind of lit me up. That opened me up to the room, and I had a great time. Ended up going home at like 4 a.m. in the morning, and it was great. And I was speaking to Roxy the next day, and she was like, yeah, he's written a book. If you want to go, like, we can go pick it up. So I got his book, threw it in my backpack, and didn't read it for 2 years. I forgot about it. I just continued off on my hero's journey. Eventually came back, maybe a couple of months later. Didn't read it for years. And then I was about 27, 28. A guy sent me a video of just something around relationships and stuff like that. And I was like, I know this guy. Oh, I've got his book. I'll read his book. Read it in 2 days. It was the quickest book I've ever read in my life. Yeah. Quickest book I've ever read in my life. And immediately reached out to him. I was like, Zan, probably don't remember me. I met you at a party years ago, but you gave me your book. And there was a part in there which I really loved, which was about changing your life in 90 days. Like, you can do whatever you want, right? And I took that as a challenge. And it's like, well, we've got this community, we've got this and that. Would you like to, would you like to join on the next one and sort of see what it's all about? I was like, I would like to join a secret group of men who love women. That sounds great. Yeah. So did that. That was in 2017, I think. Joined in 2017. Loved it. Went through the essentials with a guy called, who did I go through with? Kai. Kai was the essentials mentor before me. And yeah, went through it and then started just living it. Most of the last 10 years, really, I haven't been where I am now in the UK. But just started just writing about it in the community and things like that. And a couple of years later, I was traveling the world again. I was in New Zealand. Jordan reached out to me. Jordan McCollier reached out to me and asked if I wanted to help mentor one of the sort of the stages, the second stage. So Michael was on aliveness in Japan at 3 a.m. in the morning. I couldn't have been so misaligned with that topic to actually do it. But by the end of the session, 4 a.m., it could have been the middle of the day. I was lit up. After that, they handed over the essentials to me, and I ran it for, if I did 12 iterations of it, I think it would have been 4 years. And then they did some sort of tweaks and things like that to how sort of the essentials runs now. So probably how it runs now is very different to back in my day, as it were. But I loved coaching. I absolutely loved coaching. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. Like when someone gets it, or you've seen that they've taken something on board, come back and like start talking about their relationship or something. I loved a love story in the essentials. It was so great. Someone's like, I've met this girl, she's great. And like they'll come on the call and I'm just there like, this is great. And I love this. And I kept doing it. And still to this day, I mean, I'm 8 years in to this journey of facilitating people's heroes' journeys, I guess. That was the thing that I really latched onto, the whole hero's journey, that mytho-poetic man kind of thing. And yeah, here we sit. In between there was about 300, 400, 500 men coming through, and now they're one of them's a mentor, one of them's here doing a podcast. They're all over the world, and it's wild. I love it.
Beautiful. Those are different days, man. I remember joining Essentials in October of 2021.
Right.
and it was a class of like 30 guys, I think, and only, I don't know, maybe half made it through. Like half of them thought they wanted to change their lives and then, changed their mind halfway through and went back to who knows what they're doing now. We don't make judgments on, maybe the path many are called, few are chosen. And so it seems like you have not only, although you're in more of a coaching phase now, you've gone on many heroes' journeys. and you sounds like you were always an adventurous person, a scallywag, a rebel, a person that thought and lived on your own terms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I'm curious. You were this manager at the bank. It's I used to work in a call center too.
Yeah.
Listeners don't know this.
Soul
It's just
destroying work, right?
soul killing. They're just like you wonder why you have sexual shame because you're being so on the phone all day long.
Yes,
You have to turn it
yes,
on
of
during the
course you can
weekend.
continue to shout at me. Yes, of course. Yes.
Let me lay down as a doormat for you. So I'm curious, Lee, what, because you've gone on many heroes journeys, and in a way the coaching thing that you're on, this is your return. You've gone into the world from New Zealand to Bucharest to the States, and you've collected the elixir, as Marvin says, or the wisdom, and now you're back to share it. I wonder, at that first point, what made you take that first great leap into the unknown? You stood at the threshold of that, and you said 3 months. I thought immediately of 90 days. You know, you changed your life, everything in 90 days, and went on this great adventure. What made you pull the trigger? We always ask, you know, and Kai is an interesting guy. I never met him, but I think he was actually doing Amorati interviews before we are doing the same tradition now, maybe a couple, you know, like maybe half decade later.
Yeah.
So
do you know what? It would
cycles,
be really
man.
interesting to find my interview from that, because I was on one of those, and see that would be interesting. But why did I pull the trigger? I tell you what, I was working in the bank, and we had a new team come through. And there was this one girl. She got out quite quickly. She was too smart for it. She wasn't on my team. She was on the other manager's team, and she was leaving. But she was one of our best agents. So I just took it upon myself to tease her entire final day. Like, do not speak to Judas, like putting up signs and everything, and making this go. I didn't really talk to her before then. She was in another team, but now she had caught my ire because she was going to make our stats look rubbish. Lovely, of course. So we go out for sort of the leaving drinks, a big tradition in the UK, right? And eventually I spend most of the evening with her, just talking to this girl, because I'd never spoken to her before. And she ordered a Sailor Jerry's and Coke. I ordered a whiskey. We sat down on like some bench in the middle of this bar, really, really loud, and we start talking about what it is we want in life and things like that. It got very deep very quickly. And she asked me, what do I want? And this was kind of in the whole, when I'm in flux at this point. You know, I do not like my life at all. But I don't feel as though I can get out of it either. The thing with the relationship was, if I was going to leave, she said she was going to end it. Like, she was going to leave this plane of existence, you know. So I felt as though I had to stay. She asked me what I want, and all of this stuff's going through my mind. I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell her like how ruinous my life is at the moment. But the one thing that came up was that I always wanted to travel, and I'd never done it before. I'd never gone out solo on my own. And she hears this picture that I'm painting with my words and getting all excited about it. And she just turns to me and she goes, why don't you just fucking do it then? Bang! Hits me with the cutting words, right? No one's ever spoken to me like that. And no one's cut so deeply to have me ask a question of myself. Yeah, why haven't you? And then it's all ticking through in my mind. Well, why aren't you doing it? Well, because you've got this relationship that you can't get out of. You're not really getting paid well in this job, regardless of if you're managing a call center or not. They're paying you peanuts. You can't get out. You got to stay. You've got commitments here. You've got obligations, right? But it eats at me. It eats at me for a while, and we stay very, very close. Spoiler alert: we end up having a 5-year relationship, me and this girl. And it keeps eating at me, and I think I don't have a real answer for you. Everything else is excuses. So I've got to do something about this, and I've got to do something about this quickly. Now, this is going alongside of me going through therapy, and again, this person, you know, asking what I want and digging into all this kind of stuff and basically, I had to get over the white knight syndrome. You know, I wanted to protect this woman who I loved dearly. You know, I'd been with that woman since I was in university. Like we were together for 4 years, and I had to get it through that I couldn't save her. If she were to do the worst, it wouldn't have been my fault, which was hard to take on. And then eventually, I did end it. She's still around as well, so that's great. She lives by the sea now, and then I started traveling because I had no more excuses. I didn't leave with too much money. I had enough to be comfortable. I didn't stay very comfortable too often. It was always in sort of like these really dingy backstreet hostels and like what do you call it? Where hitchhiking and stuff like that. Like getting on buses in the middle of the night and like sleeping in bus stations and stuff like that. It was cool. Yeah, so that's what it was. That's why it started. Started because of a woman. How stereotypically Amorati of me.
Incredible, brother. I mean, what a story. And that you actually ended up with that woman who inspired you to do that. That's a statement as well, right? That there are certain kinds of women that bring this out in us, this spirit, this yearning of your
Yeah.
heart. She was calling something forth within you that made you
Mhm.
want to do that, right?
Yeah. She was like a traveler at heart as well.
Wow.
And she even had she even had like Romanian like Roma blood in her, like the traveling.
Oh, the gypsy blood.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when I started this course, when I started this essentials, we were traveling the world together because she was a big traveler as well. So eventually we just up sticks and left for a year, and then at the end of that, we ended at the end of that. That was the end of our chapter, and
Yeah. Well, I'd be curious to hear more about, because you talk a lot about the hero's journey, and you also use that theme in your coaching, as far as I understood. Maybe you could expand a bit more on that. Like, what does the hero's journey mean to you? What does it mean personally in your life, and what does it mean in your coaching when you coach other men? How do you use the concept of the hero's journey to guide them to a life that they will want to live?
well, I don't need to do much guiding in that. I think sort of as the hero's journey, you know, originally a narrative structure created by Joseph Campbell, Hero with 1,000 Faces. You saw all of these great stories, right? It was like they all follow the same thing. And I thought, this looks like it would be very, very good as a therapeutic tool, as a transformational tool. Because really, at its essence, the hero's journey is an ordinary man from an ordinary world enters a supernatural world, comes up against trials and tribulations, has a decisive battle in the cave where we fear to tread, comes back with the golden chalice for all of mankind, right? How do I use that in the coaching is an inner hero's journey. Sometimes it can be external. I think sometimes if we're disconnected from ourselves, be that from our hearts, be that from our souls, be that from our balls, like if we're up here, sometimes we need to do it outside. We need to see it outside. So you can do it geographically. You can, go on a men's retreat and do, like rage therapy and things like that. Sometimes you need to do this stuff to kind of kick it into gear to get it to work. But a lot of the time, the hero's journey is within us, because the things that we fear the most are the Jungian shadows that we do not want to look at, right? And if we can look at those, if we can face them in battle, so to speak, and integrate and incorporate that within us, like, our power starts to become known to us. Because each and every one of us on this call, anyone that's watching, I would hazard a guess that we have barely scratched the surface of what we're capable of. Until you have worked out everything up here and everything in your self-conscious, there's going to be blocks, there's going to be boundaries that we can't move through. And if you can take one of those fence posts out of the way at a time our area, our zone of genius gets a little bit bigger, right? And we start to understand how capable we are in the world, be that in relationships, be that in business, be that, even in just being with ourselves, combating solitude. A lot of people can't even deal with solitude. It becomes loneliness, right? They're the same thing, but it's a very different flavor of it. Solitude is wanted, loneliness is not. So being able to, I guess, guide people to uncover the dragon in the cave that we fear, and being able to create a space where they can work with that, overcome it and befriend it, and then bring them back to tell everyone, because that's the big part, right? Because a lot of the time we can stay here after we kill the dragon, right? We can stay in the supernatural world too long. One of the key points in the journey is the refusal of the return. You've got the call to adventure at the start, you've got the refusal to leave, right? But there's also the refusal to return. And a lot of people get stuck here in self-improvement. Because my God, what a rush it is to have a eureka moment, right? Or find out a little bit of what you're capable of. Wow, I've got this power, I've got this magnificence about me. This is cool. I need another one though. I need another seminar, another boot camp, another course, another speaker. And we'll stay here in this never-ending cycle of self-improvement. But we got to come back at some point. We've got to come back and share with others that it's possible, and that their power is a couple of very difficult introspective conversations away, because it's not an easy work. It's not easy to go into the cave that we fear and actually deal with that. There's a lot of tears, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt within there. But my God, if we can break through it a little bit and go, I'm not that person anymore. That thing isn't happening to me anymore. I've learned from it, or something like that. To then go, okay, it's possible for me. I can show other people. And then that kind of just up levels, global consciousness, right? And what more could we want?
So Lee, there's this phenomenon in the creator economy that we live in, where people use AI to generate endless information. You can liken that to PDFs, self-help things, but there's no transformational aspect. That's that never-ending rabbit hole, right? Because and it's not like AI is a bad thing, but I think if someone like you uses it, Lee, because you went to dingy bus stops, shady hostels, who knows what kind of practices were going on there, you have stories to tell. You're a brilliant storyteller, and you've collected the treasure. You've went into the cave that you most feared and fought the dragon and came back with treasure, right? And the elixir. So metaphorically, like, that is a story that's worth telling. That's a coach that is at least trustable, at least in my estimation, because you went and did stuff. You're not, in your mother's basement, trying to coach like a thing that you haven't done for yourself. You haven't walked your talk, and there's so many people like that in this space. And so the question I wanted to ask you is that there's this balance between internal and external. And as it applies to women, so many guys think self-improvement, if I go to the gym, if I read more books, if I take more Tony Robbins seminars, if I do this, it'll make me good with women. And it's not true. Like, you have to go and fight for that. So at what point, because even though it's part of the process, there's this balance between theory and practice, right? And so in your practice, how do you guide people away from this? We talked to CJ, who you're good friends with, I know, about spiritual bypassing and the illusion of progress, and to think that you're doing it on this, I bought a book. I don't have to read the book, but I have it. So therefore I'm changing my life, when realistically they feel good in the moment, but stay exactly where they are. So what is that balance in your vast experience of coaching? How do you help people step away from this mental masturbation, like Fight Club, into real transformation, into something that can actually change their life? And one way is, of course, to go on your dating odyssey, right? To go across the world, to romance women of different cultures. Marvin's done it. I've done it. You've done it. And you maybe led the way and inspired us. But what is that difference? It's a long-winded question.
So how do you get people out of just mainlining theory?
Yes, in your practice, the transformation as opposed to more information. How do you
I
make
mean,
real change?
logistically, just don't let them onto another call until they've done something. Like, if you're a coach and you are letting people off the hook with what they're supposed to be doing in between those calls, you have failed as a transformational professional. Like, there needs to be action within this, and some people will just provide information, right? Because it's very lucrative to do that. Because there's so many people that want to, because it feels safe, right? It's just another ego trick to allow us to go, right, well, I'm learning, right? I'm learning. It's like it's the shadow archetype of the sage, right? So the sage finds freedom through understanding, right? But within the shadow is the hoarder of that. They amass information. They amass all of these ancient tomes and occult lessons in seduction and pickup and cold approach and all of this kind of stuff, and they surround themselves with it. Okay, so they can be ready. They can be ready for the freedom that they're looking for. If they are left alone, it will not change. It will not change until you are able to speak to them on a deep enough level in a language that they understand to go, now is the time to move. Because that's the number one thing, right? We stay here because we're not ready, because we don't quite understand what is possible, right? The thing that needs to happen is you have no idea what's going to happen, right? That's kind of the thing you need to get across to your clients, to anyone who's sort of seeking that kind of transformation. They need to see it's possible, right? And a lot of people will try and do that through their information and things like that, but really you have to build relationships with these people and continue to poke them a little bit. You need to challenge on this. Why do you need another seminar? Why do you need another boot camp?
You have to interrupt you here because I remember taking your Mythos course after the Essentials.
Oh yeah.
And there's this idea of personal mythology, which is a much very broad subject, which we can maybe discuss at a later date. But the idea is your poking is the same in your coaching practice. It's the same as that girl did to you, right? Because so you told me you wanted to do all these things, so why don't you go fucking do it, right? But it's not like you're so terrible, I hate you, I'm judging you. It's like it's from a place of the truest act of kindness that you can do for someone else is by. It's like Marvin, remember? And we were in Brazil in that cafe, and I looked at this beautiful girl working in this like food. I'm like, why do you work here? And I don't care to brag or be impressive, but there's this aspect of you can see someone's potential more than they can see themselves. Anne writes about it. The greatest women are the ones that see the potential in you don't even see in yourself. But I'm curious your thoughts on that aspect of poking in an empathetic way, but also you have to make them uncomfortable so something actually changes, right? If it was working, then it would already be working. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, I see it as love, right? So love you can take as a feeling, you can take as this, you can take it as that. I would say that love is the consistent set of actions for the betterment of someone else. That's what love is as an action, right? As a verb, right? The consistent set of actions for the betterment of someone else. So that poking is an act of love, because when you sit in front of hundreds of men, if not thousands by this point, well, probably not thousands, but 1,000 plus, right? People that sit in front of you and you can see that there's something within them, be it if I were to sort of list through what I can see in my clients at the moment, for example, one of them's a fantastic writer. One of them is killer at what she does, like incredible, right? One guy has so much wisdom about him, like, and it can tell a story in such an engaging way. There's all, you can see these glimpses within them, and my frustration boils over because I want to see it made manifest. I want to see the book written. I want to see this person on like the stage of like a business event. I want to see a guy step out of the shadows and not be the gray man anymore, and actually, fall in love. And like it again, it's an act of love, because I couldn't want anything more than to see this person in front of me actually access their power. Because I can see it, right? And other people can see it, and they get glimpses of it, and I get glimpses of it. And they'll come back and they'll give their excuses. They'll go, well, this has happened and that has happened and the others happened. And after a while, I've got to go, no, no more. Okay. This is who I see you to be, right? And I see it in glimpses. So stop flirting with the power that you have within you. Okay. Stop flirting with greatness, because it's not good enough. We are going to die. Like, I can't imagine how many times I said this through the essentials, right? Remember your death. You're going to die, right? Do we want to be sat here fobbing me off that you couldn't do this week's homework? Or do you want to go out there, try it, mess up or not, right? Or succeed. But if you mess up, we can come back, we can debrief this, and we can look at it a different way. But then, no. No, I'm not here for that. I'm here to walk alongside you on a journey for something that you really, really want, okay? Be it to fall in love, be it to sort of step out of the shadows as a practitioner or something like that, or to re-access your power after, this moment of change, right? Or to find out what's next. It just boils over in me because I see the greatness in people. They've been with me enough that there'll be that little flickering of, oh, this is exciting. This is exciting. But they'll tampen it down. I had a client and he'd always be on the road, right? When he wasn't on the road, very somber, very nice, very affable. Nothing was ever really wrong, nice and easy breezy, right? He wasn't a one-on-one client, he was in a community. And when you're in a community, you can kind of fade into the background and watch everyone do this. But it just so happened that on this one call, he was the only one there. So I'm like, right, this is one-on-one time now. He's talking about this girl, and he's talking about this and that and the other. And he's talking about, like, I've never seen so much edge in this guy in my life, right? Never seen so much edge. And he's like, I don't know what to say to her. And I was like, you should say that. Like, please say that to her, because I've never seen you like this before. This is so raw. This is so authentic. It's so powerful. You got to do it. He comes back the next week. Not only had he enjoyed a nice evening with her, but she brought her friend. He blew my brain.
Sounds like a great time. Yeah.
He comes back and he's like, yeah, and she brought her friend. That's why I do it, because you can chat that you can't do it, or you can turn up to the next call and go, I had a threesome.
From that shadow, from that place of such confusion and desperation, there's the real treasure there. And I wonder, because it's not like you go in the street telling everyone you need to do this and this and this. These people came to you for help, right? Like, you're not like, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is, it's like when you give, like, let's say you give some money to a poor person, you don't give them, here's a couple pounds and you're broke. You don't. So people come to you for help, and then that's when they are open to the feedback before you, because if you place your expectations on someone else wanting to change their life, a lot of people don't even want to change their lives, right? So you'll be disappointed if they don't do anything with their lives as well, right? So there's a flip side to it, but you're not telling everyone how to be in your Jesus and anything like that, right? You're there's a healthy way, is what I'm hearing in your practice. Marvin, I think you wanted to say something earlier. Maybe I cut you off.
Yeah, I was wondering, because maybe you can tell from your experience, Lee, if a lot of guys go up, they do everything that's expected, like they buy the books, they buy the courses, watch the videos, do everything that's still within the comfort zone. And then there is one step that usually comes up eventually, at least that was it like that for me, where you can't see past the horizon. There's a step in your journey where you have to take a leap of faith into the darkness, into the unknown, as we say on this podcast. And that's, I think, the most crucial moment, where you either have the faith and the courage to kind of step into that, and then you usually make the experience that there's somebody's going to be there to catch you in that darkness and to guide you further along the way. But what's your experience of guiding men up to that point where you get all the free PDFs and the books and the videos and everything, and then actually taking that step into the unknown? Like, what's your experience of having men approach that horizon kind of and step over it?
I think it happens so much, right? Because there's a lot of information out there, and a lot of people are basically saying the same things. They'll have a different focus of what is important, because really you can kind of add these kind of things, and really all that it does is just buy you more time until like they're going to make a decision, you know, be it money, be it looks, be it your height, those kinds of things. Or it can be, you know, this kind of communicating with them and stuff like that. It's going to buy you a certain amount of time to come across. Is the question, what is the step into the dark, or is it how do they manage to go through it?
Yeah, I would be most interested in the process of how you go from the life of comfort, stepping in the process of making the decision and then taking action of stepping into the dark, or how, from your perspective, how do you guide men in that process in the best possible way, or give them support?
When it comes to that moment, now a lot of people, generally speaking, will not change their lives until they kind of can understand their burning platform. Okay, so a lot of coaching will be around sort of like the golden idol. Like, what is the idealized version of yourself? Okay, what does that look like? Okay, imagine if it was this, imagine if it was that. If you read any course, any seminar, they're going to tell you to imagine some things, right? They're giving you the golden idol. Now, generally, people don't work like that. Like, we pursue pleasure and avoid pain, right? Hedonic adaptation. But pain is a much bigger motivator than that. So, again, it comes with challenge to actually take people over this point, is to build this burning platform with them. What does it look like if it all goes wrong? You know, what does it look like if I am still doing boot camps, taking seminars, following new, you know, influencers, dating influencers, whatever it is, and you're still in the same situation in 10 years because you haven't moved? What are you going to feel like then? What are you going to feel like when you're 50? We're really superstitious around numbers, right? All you need to call out is where is the next 5 or 0 age, be it 25, be it 30, be it 35, 40, 50 is a big one. There's a 5 and a 0. We get very superstitious around that number. Half a century, my God, right? Sometimes these things already bring us to that point. Really, when it comes to sort of the existential asset that is time, right? How long have I got left? If you can get them on how long I've got left and build it around that, then we get a bit of fire behind us, right? It's shit or bust time. Okay, what am I going to do? So it's to find within them where their spark is, to see that and to recognize that and to honor that with them. And then to also build a burning platform alongside them, because they may already be doing this already. The chances are they're not going to be trying to find help unless they have started to build that burning platform. I haven't had a girlfriend in 5 years, or I'm working paycheck to paycheck, or I'm in a job that I hate. They're starting to build that burning platform, but we kind of get stuck in a loop of a similar thought, right? I'm in a bad job. I'm in a bad job. I'm in a bad job. We don't finish the story. I'm in a bad job, which is probably going to take me to the end of my working years. I'll be retired on a shitty pension in a place where I don't really want to live. I haven't lived. Oh God, I've got 12 years left, and then I'm dead, right? The amount of times that I have to bring up is sort of remembering their death is that was always the nuclear option. Remember, you're going to die. Remember, you're going to die. If you went through the essentials with me, Marvin, you would have heard it 13 times, because I would have said it on each and every single call. Remember, guys, we've got to remember. So I think that's it. You've got to find the greatness within them, honor it, and speak it aloud to them. Catch them in those moments, because then they can feel it. Then they can access a little bit of that power, right? Then you need to try and manage a place where they can build that burning platform, where they can jump from. And then you stay with them. You stay with them while they make the changes and the course corrections and things like that to actually get to a point where they can break through it. I think that's the 3 steps there.
So then you brought up the question, and I remember 13 weeks in a row, remember you will die. What are you going to live? How are you going to live your life? What are you going to do with your life now? So I'll share personally. When I was 16, I fell asleep while driving. I should have died. Went into oncoming traffic, hit a car dealership. There was a big fence through the passenger side of the windshield. I was fine, unscratched, and it just I watched Peaky Blinders, and there was a quote that stood out to me, and that was, "Yeah, I'm already dead." This guy Tommy Shelby has a gun to his head. I'm already dead. This is all extra. And so that's an extreme version, and not everyone has to go through that to start living on their own terms, obviously. And I told that story very quickly, but what is your experience? What's your relationship to death? Lee, you're writing a book, and if I remember correctly, it's called Death and Desire. But
That's
what
the
is
one.
that? Right. And you posted some passages of it, and it was a fascinating read. What is that like for you in your body of work, in your messaging, and in your practice, and in your own daily life? That practice of death, mortality awareness for you.
So I'll take you back even further in my journey now. So I was 19, and I've never shared this story publicly, actually. But I was 19, so I was 18, 19. I didn't go to university straight away. I thought I'll make some money first, so then I can have, a great freshers week, which I guess you guys would call like rush week or something like that. Like your introductory weeks to university. Fell in with a bad crowd, and sort of went down the route of trying to escape through various potions and powders and things like that, just to keep it PC here. And I found myself in a bit of a situation. I'd taken too much of something. I was zoning out. My consciousness was falling to the back of me. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to die. The immediate thought after was, I'm okay with that. And then another part of me, which I call the foreman. So anytime I've sort of gone off on these kind of astral journeys, be it through plant medicine and things like that, there's always the foreman which I can rely on to remind me that I'm just seeing reality in a different way. So the foreman pipes up and goes, "No, you're choking." I'm like, oh. I'm being so stereotypically like a rock star right now, a pretend rock star. Okay, I can hear everything around me. No, like everyone can see that I'm choking, from what I can tell. No one cares though. They're all on their own little journeys at this point. I'm like, right, you've got to do something at this point, otherwise you're done. You're done at this point. Eventually, I'm able to turn my head, make a mess, come back. Okay. Now, after that, for a while, I've had a very complex relationship with death. I'd seen the edge of the true unknown, if we want to go back to what we were talking about there, Marvin. The great unknown is what happens after this. I was right up to the edge of it, and I said, I'm okay with this. But then, all the way through uni, I'd find myself waking up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and my heart's pounding. It's tight. I can't breathe really well. I'm thinking, I'm going to die. I'm not okay with this at this point. Ever since then, I wasn't okay with it. Well, not ever since then. For the couple of years after, I wasn't okay with it. So I'd end up checking myself into like the emergency room, and they'd just say you're having a panic attack. So I went through this whole long spate of sort of serious health anxiety until probably around the time where sort of the grand transformation happened and Lee became an explorer. I met with a therapist who sort of dealt with this kind of stuff. Not professionally, romantically within this point. And we'd always sort of sort of go back and forth. Actually, no, it was later. It was later than that. It would have been while I was with the Amorati. So this was in 2020. Wow, it was in 2020. Dating in 2020 was interesting, but she was a therapist, and she asked me to write a problem statement. A really cool thing to do on a date, right? Write out what this problem is. And basically, all it came around to was like, every time I feel a pain in my arm, or this, or that, or the other, I feel as though I'm going to die, and I feel as though I'm going to die very, very soon. And all that I can think of is that this is going to happen very soon, and it takes the focus away from living to dying. And it was basically the underlying thing was like, you're focusing so much on this that you're missing out on life. Changed. Okay, right. With my focus on all of these panic attacks, everything like this, I have focused on the wrong thing. I'm focusing on the destination. If you want to be really, really morbid about it, you've got to take this away. So then the relationship with death very much changed, and this is kind of the start of the book. Really, this was the beginnings, the seeds of death and desire, which basically, I'm not sure how much to give away. Well, when I started writing it, because it's gone through a few iterations, it's basically a guy tries to take his own life, and he is met by death. And she's this beautiful woman, like the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in the world. And she has this command over whatever this world is that he walks through at the moment. He is seduced by her, he is terrified by her, and he has to hand over his love letter to her, which is the story of his life. And she's not happy, because she's seen so many love letters like this before. All of these men going through life and having nothing that leaves her like seduced by them, wanting them. And she goes, there's something about you though. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you back. I'm going to send you back because I want another letter from you. Because it was always ticking over in my mind that our lives are a love letter to death. And by this time, this is where I'm giving you the the big speech every single week. Remember your death, remember your death, remember your death. Because it felt as though we're writing a love letter to death, you know? A lot of it, you know, we see them as this tall, hooded figure with the scythe. I saw it as this beautiful woman who has always watched over us and wants us to do well and wants to have a story at the end that she can feel as though she is ready to take this man or woman. You know, it doesn't matter. You know, there is an entity at the end of our lives which wants to be seduced by the story of our lives, and it changed something in me because I'd done all the Stoic work and everything, Marcus Aurelius, Memento Mori, remember your death, live well, and all this kind of stuff, and it never really hit. And then this image of the woman came up, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. I get it. I understand. Because sometimes I get a bit. I've always seen seduction as a bit of a game. I've always thought that game was called game because it's supposed to be fun, right? So I'm like, okay, right. How do I seduce death now? So that's always in the back of my mind. How do I seduce her with the story of my life? And yeah, that's where I find myself on that path at the moment when it comes to mortality. Is that life is a love letter to death.
Wow. I'll take it a step further. I have this poster right here. You guys can see. We're here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us. And I think this powerful practice that you have of personifying death. I went through an ayahuasca ceremony, and not recommending, this is just my experience, in March or April of last year, about a year ago, in Colombia, and everyone looked like a sarcophagus, you know, everyone looked already dead in the ceremony. It was creepy, but it was interesting. And at some point, death just materialized beside me. I viewed him as a brother that was older than me, slightly ahead on the journey, but that thing will be different from us, right? But I just like, death is my friend, and he's always in the room now for me, and he influences every decision. So, but that pathway is different, is what I'm hearing from you, right? But I wonder, maybe everyone has to find their relationship with death that means the most to them to really start living. I wanted to take it further and add a bouncing point onto your share,
100%.
man, because
I,
that's so interesting what you said.
I love that you kind of have this archetypical image of death. If that were a question to me, should people have an archetypical image of death? Absolutely, absolutely, because we have all of these different figures that we need to poeticize our existence, right? We need to we live through narrative. We be it news narrative, be it this, be it that, right? You can live automatically, or you can write a story with your life. And sometimes you need to make characters. I've made the foreman, I've made the personification of death. Seems as though I'm talking to voices in my head, but it's an easier way for me to understand these grand concepts. Like the foreman really is like the superego. If we were to look at Freud, right, the guy who's really in charge, really in control. So I have the foreman there. Okay, I can always come back to this guy. He's always going to keep me straight and level, right? Because the guy who's running the show most of the time, he doesn't know what's going on. Lee, as this being, doesn't always know what he's doing. So sometimes he needs to check in with the foreman. Sometimes he needs to check in with the personification of death, because he's not living like on his edge, right? Absolutely, we need to find those archetypical images, because we shy away from it so much, don't we? Because it is the grand unknown. The final step to whatever it is, regardless of what your beliefs are, regardless of what your religion, if you're spiritual, if you're that, the other. You can think you're going to come back as a scorpion. You can think that you're going to come back as every single person on this earth. That's like a philosophical thing, which I kind of vibe with. Maybe it's nothing. Or if it's nothing, I better go, right? I can always lean on these other two that I might come back as a worm, or I might come back as someone else. But what if it's nothing, right? That's tough. I get to the end.
Or eternal.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you remind me of eternal recurrence, Nietzsche. And Marvin was telling me about this interesting metaphor of maybe the light at the end of the tunnel is just you coming out of your mother's womb. Again, there's this idea of who knows, right? Right? There's some interesting theories you have about this. But either way, it's like, are you living your life by accident, or are you, okay, I'm going to die, and that's not a bad thing. Like you were like, you know what, I'm okay with that. And there's this idea, maybe there's a point in Greek terminology, it's called kairos. It's called sacred time. It's when your life is so shit, or something is so different about the space time in your life, that real transformation can actually happen. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in the ordinary world, when you're in the ordinary routine of stuff, and I don't mean to preach, this is something interesting that I read, and it's like in that time period, whether that is you almost overdosing, or Marvin or something, or me almost crashing, you're very receptive to real changes. Your life splits into past and into future in the sacred time, right? Mm-hmm. And this idea of maybe that's where true transformation happens, but can you manufacture that feeling without having to go to the brink, to go to the edge of the abyss, to go to that? I think maybe because you and I will take these close calls with death much more personally than someone that hears it as a story, right? But is there a way to kind of share the lesson without the cost in your estimation? I would love to know.
I think
you seem perfectly qualified to speak on this.
I think so. It's definitely possible, right? And I think a lot of people will have these moments, these, as you say, the kairos, the sacred moment, the sacred space where everything can go one way or the other, right? This is a choice point. Okay, now you can I mean, really, no, it wouldn't be manufactured, but there are ways of kicking the door down, right? Be it through ayahuasca, be it through a near-death experience, be it through, going on some kind of hero's journey, or, fasting on the top of a mountain and things like that. People devote years and decades to this practice. There's the, ascetic monks and things like that. They will devote themselves to that practice of getting to that point, right? And I think, then we can learn a lesson from the monks, right? You can kick the door down by taking powders and potions and almost crashing and taking a big lesson from that, and it will happen very quickly. Do not do any of those things. You've probably got some choice points in your life where you can get to it anyway. There are easier ways of doing it. Sometimes it only takes someone to say the right thing, right? To see something in the right way. Because I just had to write a problem statement while I was on a date with a therapist to go, I'm focusing more on death than I am on life. Because there was that moment where, I had the near-death experience, but it kind of dropped away. And still living quite unintentionally for 6 years after that. I go to university, find a girlfriend, big party boy, having a great time, going off on all these sort of boozy holidays and things like that. And it was good. It was good for a while. But then again, I'm asked to remember. You did something very, very poignant when you were 19, and you said you were going to live, and you're going around and around and around. So bang, Dark Night of the Soul comes in. Dark Night of the Soul comes in to go, right, okay, you've got to do something about this. Can we manufacture it? Yes, I think it takes a lot of intentional practice. And probably the hardest point is to actually start being intentional with your life. It probably takes a lot less time than you think it does to be able to do that. If you don't, it will come looking for you. That's the whole Dark Night of the Soul thing. It was I can't remember the guy who was it, but he was a saint, and he was talking about his disconnection with divinity, with God. And he was coming further and further away from it. He was getting a bit disillusioned and stuff like that. And then bang, Dark Night of the Soul comes in, rolls right in to put a very clear mirror up in front of him to go, okay, we need to have a conversation. So can we manufacture it? Probably. If it's done the wrong way, the lesson's going to come back anyway. Because we're on one grand hero's journey, right? And there's a lot of choice points in there. There's the Guardians, right? Where we have to answer the Sphinx's riddle. Sphinx is going to come around and go, right, you've not been doing what you said you were going to do, and just blow you in two. And then you got to pick up the pieces.
Yeah, I would just like to highlight for everybody listening your story from being okay with death, accepting death in a way. Then the next step was not wanting to die and kind of running away from death.
Mm-hmm.
And then you somehow transformed that into this image of a beautiful woman, and you're writing a love poem to her as the metaphor for death. Did I get that right? That was kind of your arc of your relationship with death?
Yeah, so your sonnet is your life, right? If you're going to write a sonnet to a beautiful woman, that sonnet is the story of your life. Each and every chapter, the good, the bad, the ugly, the times where you sat on your sofa and in your pants and ate crisps and just dossed off for a while, and all of the good stuff where you went out to the brink of the world and you met this girl at 4 a.m. in the morning in a dusty, cloudy cigarette smoke bar, and you had that one moment with her, and then it went away. She wants to see all of this, but she doesn't want to see you just doing the same thing over and over again, especially if it ignites that inner disquiet within us. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, right? There's this inner disquiet within us. She doesn't want to read that, and you don't want to live it. Even if she's not there to read it, you don't want to live it, and you push it away, and you do the same thing again and again and again. You get home and you think, why is my life like this? Because right now you don't think you can do anything else. You think you've got to do this. You think you have the obligations. You think you have the commitments, be it in a job, be it in your marriage, be it with kids and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't have kids. I'm not married. I know these are commitments, right? You are not locked into anything in your life. You don't have to do anything in life. Okay, sometimes, you're gonna have to have a couple of difficult conversations if you're in a marriage that you hate and you're in a business that you hate and you don't want to be here anymore. You're gonna have to step up. You're gonna have to step up and say the thing that you really don't want to say that's probably gonna break her heart, right? But it is gonna break her heart all the more, or will just turn her against you and wonder where this man was that she met all those years ago, if you were to just sit there and pretend that everything is okay, just to be polite, just to be easy.
Do you have I can see you want to say something, Justin. Let me just ask briefly. Do you have a ritual that you do to connect to that persona of death and to communicate with that? And do you have like a practical tip for someone listening of how to nurture that or create that bond with death and maybe create their own archetype of death and build a relationship with that?
When it started, this just came to me in a flash. Like this whole, I was at a meetup for like business owners. We were, and really it was just sort of like going out and partying with cool people and having a thing. And we were all staying in this massive apartment in London, and they'd all gone out to explore London. And I was like, I want to write right now. I've always been a writer when it comes into it, a bit of a poet, bit of a someone who likes to narrativize their life first of all, but to try and put it down on paper and try and just sort of tick through these things. You know, so that's always been a part of my process, just writing things down, getting it out, and things like that. And this image of this woman just sort of poured through within that. And I imagine it was just taken from the guy that I was at that point, because by this point I'm probably 3-4 years into, you know, a huge apprenticeship in seduction artistry at this point. So women are probably really top of mind at that point. But I think in order to find these archetypes, we need to go on that hero's journey. Maybe not to complete it, but we need to have that inner hero's journey within us where we can connect to these parts of ourselves, our subconscious, to understand what our dreams mean, or just to add meaning to them, and to try and find intuition and those gut feelings and things like that, because then we kind of get to understand our own inner world, you know, and we can start to make these characters, because imagination is infinite, right? If we can start to connect to these things and to start finding that artist within us, start writing these things down, and we can start to create these archetypes. How can you do that if you're not artistic? Again, I think it's writing it down, you know, like free writing, for example. You put a question at the top of a page, and then you write whatever it is that you're thinking. Oh, my hand's cramping up, you write that down. Oh, I need to pee, you write that down. Eventually you're going to get some stuff out of it. So it's being in constant conversation with yourself, I think. Having these constant conversations with yourself to be able to understand the inner voices, the inner archetypes, the inner characters within our grand journey, I think, is how we do that. And you can do that through meditation. You can do that through writing. You can do that through song. You do it through all sorts of things, but connecting to who you are, then you're going to start to be a little bit more liberal with yourself, where you can allow yourself to dream and make up these, you know, these characters which don't really mean anything to anyone else, but they mean something to you, right? Yeah, constant conversation, consistent, raw conversation with yourself.
That's that lifestyle designing your life aspect in your coaching, right? I think of Marvin as a great example, because Marvin, he writes poems, he draws art, he plays piano. Yeah, he hits all three on that artist of life. Poeticize your presence.
Yeah.
Explore your relationship with the divine. Channel something greater in this vessel of a body that is channeling our consciousness or whatever. And man, made me think a lot this conversation, Lee. And one of the ideas is that Lady Death, Mistress Death, it's no fun for her if you already dead on the inside when you show up at her doorstep. Right? And how many men, especially with the symbols and the heroes, which there's not many of, and the kind of ugly culture that we live in, are already dead on the inside. And if I just wonder if they knew that there was a message like yours, that there was a message like Ars Amorata out there, how it would change their lives. But how many men just somnambulate, sleepwalk through life, and are dead on the inside? The massive men live lives of quiet desperation. Thoreau, Marvin and I often talk about this guy, and it's like it's your choice, right? It's like you're describing. If you, I use a different word for it, but I think it's the same truth leading up the same mountain. I say mythologize your life, craft your personal myth, right? Like, what is, are you just here to be an animal that eats, sleeps, fucks, and dies? Or are you here to do something, maybe a spark of divinity or something with your life? And there's no template for this. And I think in your practice, the one-on-one is probably the most, I was watching this interview and they said that the most like school fails because it's so, you get people that don't want to be there. The whole schooling system fails because you get a ton of people and there's no individualized attention. And the only thing that affects true performance and transformation is one-on-one attention, whether that is private tutoring or if that takes the form of transformational myth coaching, for example, like Lee. So what is that like? How can you have all these tools and things, right? All these technologies and things, and people are more disconnected and more, their soul is dead than ever before.
Mhm.
And so it's an interesting thing. I don't think we're the saviors by any means, but I think this is an interesting conversation that if people just knew that there's a different way, you know, like to live life, right? Like, gosh. So I find what you do very inspiring, man. I've taken a lot of inspiration from this conversation. Is there a timeline on when your book will be released? Not to rush you or anything. These things take time. But what does kind of that look like?
I'd ideally like it out by my birthday, or being marketed. I want it to be finished by my birthday, so October, middle of October. I'd like it to be finished, and I always come up. So I've rewritten this probably about 5 times now, and I always get to the end of the first act where they board a ship. So, well, originally he would board a ship, and he would be visited in the night by her. And he thinks it's this other antagonist which he's found within here. It's this shadow being, right? It's just this id-like creature that is feral and primal and just awful, right? And he thinks it's that, which has come to find him again. It's her. She's playing with him. She's teasing him within there. And at this point, which is, if you were to look at the hero's journey, is the first threshold, right? This is where you are asked if you want to stay in the ordinary world or enter the supernatural world, and you must go into it with all of your being, right? So within my hero's journey as writing this novel, I kept coming up against that first threshold and going, no, I'm not ready yet. Not ready yet. So now I've committed myself to move past that threshold and go, I'm fully ready to delve into the supernatural world with these thoughts, with these stories, with the ideas that I'm trying to crystallize and transfer to other people. I'm now committed on that journey off onto the horizon. It couldn't have been any more sort of obvious and on the nose with its poeticism, you know. That I can't get past the bit where he goes off to the horizon, right? Start again, go back to the supernatural world and things like that. But yeah, that's where I found myself for a couple of years, and now, now it's time to move past the threshold.
It's exciting, man. So by October, is there a way, we usually do this at the end, but is there a way for people who are really excited about your book to kind of get notified when the book releases, when the book launches? Do you have a mailing list, something people can sign up for?
I will have by the time this goes out. Thank you, Marvin. I'm terrible at wait lists.
Good. Well,
I just tell
we'll
people
link it. We'll
about
make sure
these
to link
things.
it below. Yeah.
By the time this comes out, there will be a mailing list at the bottom of this video or wherever you find your podcasts. That's what a good podcaster would say, wouldn't it?
That's what you got to say. Perfect.
Yeah.
I also got here Vlad's question from last conversation. But Justin, do you want to ask something? Go into another topic before we close out with a question.
I think it had to happen, this conversation. It's been years since we've last talked, Lee, and I look forward to this whole world, that we can explore, So as far as anything I want to say, I'd love to have you back on, as soon as possible. This is possibly, as we, podcast, the best episode on this channel so far, in my opinion. And I think that if we keep going, I think there's something truly special and unique that's brewing here. And I don't know how it's going to happen specifically, but maybe that it will if we just continue in this energy and this conversation with what you're doing, what we're doing with some collaborations and things. So I'm very excited and inspired.
I think so, Justin. I think you've got to keep going, because some of the conversations that you're having within here are necessary conversations, and it's nice to see so many different people saying different things, but really at the core of it is to let's go and live fully and truly and beautifully within this. It is possible.
Yes.
There's all these people from different worlds with different ideas and things like that. Like the last one I saw was Alejandro's, a completely different start of the, of life for me and Alejandro.
Right.
Same for CJ, continue having these. I'd be more than happy to come on here again as well. I'd love to.
Incredible.
It's been
the
a fantastic
names change, but
conversation.
the story stays the same.
Yeah.
It's and what does that mean for you, Lee, for you, Marvin, for myself, for everyone that's listening? Because that personal myth, that exploration is different, but it's all the same. And I mean, it helps in the Amorati or in your community, Lee, to have people alongside you, brothers that won't judge you or keep you small or be upset if you're more successful than them, people that are happy for your success, people that actually like women, people that are concerned with something greater than themselves, instead of just a mundane, everyday, ordinary life. What kind of life is that? So what's the question, Marvin?
Yeah, exactly, man. So this question comes from Vlad, and he wants to know, in all its glory, what are your addictions currently?
I am a nicotine addict through and through. Even in my pursuit of women, this was one thing that I started doing when I sort of used to go out and sort of skulk around towns for like three days out of 7. I always buy a packet of cigarettes, because the real conversation happens out in the smoking area. Spoiler alert, you don't need to have cigarettes to actually go out there. Outside of my earthly, dirty addictions, writing really has me at the moment. It has got its steely talons into me, not just necessarily with the book, but just writing and trying to crystallize on what this journey has been so far, what I've seen, and hopefully writing in a way that challenges people, like pokes them a little bit too hard, where they go, ow, oh, I didn't like that, but takes notice, right? If we want to talk about manufactured calls to adventure, that's what I'm trying to do at the moment with these things. But sometimes just trying to like pass through these beautiful experiences that I've had, be it in relationships, be it with women, be it just being awestruck by something. A couple of weeks ago, I took myself up into the north of England to be in like the only gold-rated dark night sky reserve. So basically, there's just no light pollution up there. Just took myself on a little bit of a hero's journey up there to just be basically on my own within here and face the majesty of the universe right at me. Wow, looking at this stuff and trying to transmit that to other people. So that transmission of a shared worldview and hopefully an optimistic one, to go, we've got to do this. The world seems to be falling around itself at the moment and getting pretty tough. If you look at everything out there, you're like, this is tough. Like we're in the end times, right? I don't think so. Like, just get rid of your news, get rid of all of this nonsense, and just look at this worldview. Look at this thing over here. That like life is beautiful. The world is awe-inspiring and is full of wonderment. So nicotine, writing, and I think I'll always be addicted to this, but the feeling of anticipation, we can call it nervousness, we can call it excitement. Really, it's the same thing physiologically within us, but that anticipation. And the higher the anticipation, like, the anticipation, like, especially when when you've met a girl for a first time and there's that moment, there's nothing going on, but there's no sound. There's all sub-communication. There's this golden thread between you. The walls of intimacy are closed down. Something is going to happen. I like that. Or just being on the brink of, showing my work to other people. Like I asked for a couple of beta readers for the first 10 chapters and showing that and being like, oh, this is tough. I got asked to be sort of part of the leadership team for a men's mental health group, 36,000 people in there. I'm on the edge of this, the anticipation, something's going to happen. Wow. I think that's the biggest addiction that I have to that. Like,
People listening to this podcast in anticipation of your book, Lee.
absolutely. Yeah. You'll be more anticipatory if you go speak to that pretty girl, though. You join the wait
Yeah,
list.
'cause
Join the wait list and forget about it. Go out there and live life. Seduce death.
live a life that death would tremble to take. There's an element, and people have been saying the world's going to end for thousands of years.
Oh, 100%.
What makes us so special? Maybe it does. So what? You lived your life before that happened, right?
Yeah.
So interesting, man.
Yeah. What a
Oh, I can
fantastic
already.
conversation, man.
I actually, Marvin, I actually think that even setting up for next time, and people make long-term promises on short-term feelings. We know who wrote that, but I really sense this sense of, and I should pull up your bio so I don't misquote it, because I think it's very interesting the way you put it. But I'm gonna say that there's a sense of personal myth that we can explore in future conversations, creating majesty, a majestic life. Marvin, creating your life like a work of art, sculpting yourself from the raw marble into beautiful statue like Michelangelo. But I want to read your statement here that it's on your Facebook profile, which we'll link down below as well if people want to get in touch with you. That is self-actualize, self-alchemize, and live a life of magnificence steeped in purpose and meaning. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
And how far removed is that from the ordinary existence of so many men and women that you work with today? That's inspiring.
Yeah.
What you do is
Absolutely.
incredible, man.
And I think all people need is to hear something in the right way, or to have that right call to adventure to go, oh, it's possible. Because we've all been there before where we thought this was it. And then something happened. Be it someone telling me, why don't you just fucking do it then? It's going to be different for you guys. Marvin, you were telling me about how you just decided to go to Bucharest and, track down someone who you wanted to learn from. There is keep your eyes open for the call to adventure, because everyone listening and everyone here has barely scratched the surface of what they're capable of. And that excites me. Yeah. Let's go. Let's create a life of purpose and meaning, because what else are we going to do, right? What else are we doing here? Let's do something.
Freaking awesome. I want to ask you one more thing, and I look forward to the day when this podcast shifts from online to in person, as the caravan reunites, as the band reunites, and if we can all sit in the same room, wherever that is in the world, because who knows with these things. What would you say to that 18-year-old, 19-year-old lost version of you hanging around people that you were not inspired by, or to that guy that's in that job that he hates, that's in customer service, that's the manager, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures, but hates his life because no amount of money is ever going to buy a single second of time back? What would you say to that guy that's listening to this podcast, that's lost and looking for a better way forward, to close us out, Lee?
What would I say to 18-year-old me? I would say, do it all over again. Do it all over again and you will be fine. There are going to be some hard times coming up. There are going to be some fantastic times coming up. You will curse me out for telling you to walk this path, but I promise you that you will be okay and you will find a life that is so great and so magnificent and so meaningful to you that you'll thank me when you're there. And I hope if we were to do this in 30 years, I would say the same thing. I think that's what I'd say.
Incredible. What a way to close up this conversation, Lee. Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.